It's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Gets the ball, gets back, pulls up for the win. Got it! Detroit basketball.
Oh, Holloman looks the clock. Half court for the win.
Oh! The Lions go for it. The Vikings bring it in. The pass is a touchdown to give.
Javi Baez homered earlier. First one in the air, deep left field again. Yes, Tigers win. Javi is unstoppable.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Welcome one, welcome all on well, you can't really tell because it's dark outside already, but on a very warm Tuesday evening. Tomorrow it's going to be probably raining. Saw like 90% shot of rain tomorrow, so that's going to be fun. But hey, at least the snow will probably go away, right? Now, here's the thing. This is a completely unrelated topic. We'll get into the actual substance of the show in just a bit. This is fake. Like this little early spring that we're getting here in late February. No, I'm not falling for it. Okay? I've been living in Michigan my whole life. 26 years of life I've been living in this glorious state. I'm not falling for it. I know what this is. This is fake spring. This is to get you into that false sense of security. We're past the worst of it. It was real cold in January. We had those crazy snowstorms, all that. We're done. We don't have to worry about it. No. Do not fall for this trick. It is a trick. Do not fall for it. So, all right. I didn't really want to talk about this. Excuse me. This isn't really a heavy news week. This will pretty much be the lone segment of the show. But hey, slow news week. So, Michigan State basketball. All right, finally, I'm talking about it, right? We've been waiting for this day. I'm sure many people have been waiting for me to actually dedicate a full segment to Michigan State hoops. And the reason I've been waiting is not because I didn't think Michigan State was good. I mean, they went on that run there where they won like a million games in a row, plenty of them on the road. But you look back at it, they weren't really against all that good of opponents. I mean, they beat the doors off of Maryland 91-48. They snuck out of Jersey with a win against Rutgers. They murdered Oregon and Washington on the West Coast. They beat Indiana at home. That was an impressive win. But outside of that, no, not a whole lot. The last really good win Michigan State had was against North Carolina in a neutral site game. So, and they lost to Duke at home by 6 in a game that they really could have and should have won. And now they've lost 3 out of their last 4. Now, granted, tonight they got a chance to get themselves back on track. They got a game against UCLA at home. And then following that, they got a game against Ohio State at home. So they got back-to-back home games. They can get themselves back on track. Here's the thing. In that 3 out of 4 stretch, I got to tell you, the weaknesses of the team have become incredibly well known. Let me run by some stats for you real quick. So I was looking at the stats for this team yesterday when I was doing some show prep. Just because, the narrative around the team is that they don't shoot well. And I was like, okay, narrative-wise, I can just watch the games. I can see that Michigan State struggles to shoot the basketball from deep. Let's just take a look at, what it actually is. So here are the 3-point percentages from the players with the most minutes all the way down until we get to players that I honestly don't think anybody even knows about. So you have your leading minutes getter. That's Jeremy Fears. He averages 25.3% from 3. Following him is Cohen Carr. He averages 26.9% from 3. Then you got Jackson Kohler, who averages 40% from 3. So you got 1 out of 3 is good. And then you got Carson Cooper, 25%. Jordan Scott, 33%. Okay. Kerr Tang, 35%. Okay. Divine Ugochukwu, who is out for the season, he was shooting 44%. Cam Ward has 0. Trey Fort 32, and then you just start to get your starters are typically going to be Fears, Carr, Kohler, Cooper, and maybe Scott or Tang. It used to be Ugochukwu, but now it's probably between Scott, Tang, and maybe you throw a Cam Ward in there. You have 3 starters shooting less than 30% from 3. One of those players leads you in minutes with 31.5 minutes from Jeremy Fears, shooting 25% from 3. Unacceptable. You're not going to win in this modern college basketball, or really in any basketball, when your best scorer, the guy with the most points per game on your team, is shooting 25% from deep. It's just not going to work. And I love Jeremy Fears. He's really stepped up this year, and he is one of the top passers in college basketball right now. He is one of the top point guards in college basketball. His largest flaw, and it is a major flaw, is that he can't shoot. Now, who do you really blame for all of this? Well, primarily, I guess you'd blame Tom Izzo, because Tom Izzo is the one who put together this team, knowing that over the last 3 to 4 years at this point, Michigan State has struggled to find that shooter. Pretty much since Cassius Winston left, they have not found his replacement in terms of his shot. Okay. And I just don't know why this is not obvious to Tom. I like Jackson Kohler, but he's not Steph Curry. He's not just going to go out there and shoot a bunch of threes. Even with Jackson Kohler, let me just pull him up really quick. His stats. He's not taking a bunch of threes. So even with those numbers, let's just check his game log. He had 8 threes against Illinois. That was probably the most. Against Wisconsin in the loss, he shot just 4 times from 3, 5 times against Minnesota, 7 times he did against Michigan, 6. Then he got 2, 5, 4, 6. It's usually around 5 to 6 or 5 to 7 ish is probably the average there. So he's not shooting a whole lot from 3. And yeah, his numbers are good, but you got to imagine a lot of that might be inflated by some of the games where he was out of his mind. I mean, against Nebraska, he shot 5 for 6 from 3. That was a crazy night. USC 3 for 3, 3 for 6 against Northwestern. Just in his last few games, excuse me, he's made in 2 of the last 3 games, he's made just 2 threes. Obviously, he made 3 against Illinois, but in 2 of the games, so against Minnesota, he made just 1 3. Against Wisconsin, he made just 1 3. And what do you know? Those are 2 losses. What do you know? When your lead 3-point shooter is hitting just 1 3, you're losing the game. What a shock. Now, I don't want to just totally blame Tom Izzo because he's not the one playing, and some of these guys playing are just falling apart right now. And I'm going to call out Carson Cooper because the last few games with him, it's like, dude, what happened? What shut down in your brain that you just it's just not working? Okay, in this stretch of 4 games, okay, he's had 6 points, 0 points, 9 points, and 6 points. He has not crossed double-digit points in the last 4 games. That's compared to a stretch from the Washington game where he was scoring 10, 19, 14, 12, all in wins, by the way. Excuse me. So Carson Cooper, he's not stepping up, despite the fact that he has improved greatly from where he started when he was, a youngster here at Michigan State. This is his senior year, and we're getting down the stretch. This is where you got to play your best basketball, and he is not living up to the pressure. And it didn't help that after the Michigan game, he had to go run his mouth talking about, oh, I feel bad for Minnesota. Do you? Do you really? Because they beat you. So I feel bad for you for having said that and have to live with the fact that you put on my school's colors on a bi-weekly basis, and you had to say that. That's what I feel bad for. Now, like I kind of alluded to earlier, I don't think there's really any reason to be in a massive panic right now. And it's not that I mean, look, Michigan State is not a national championship contender. They're not a Big Ten contender. They're a tournament team. They might make some noise, but they're just not. They're not. They are not the team they were. Excuse me. They are not the team. Excuse me again. Wow. They are not the team they were last year. They're just not as good. And the loss of, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my goodness. Not Jameis. Why is Jameis the only name? Jace. Wow. The loss of Jace Richardson to the NBA was massive because he would come into games and he'd be able to shoot at a fairly effective rate and he could take games over. And if he wasn't taking them over, you also had, Jaden Akins, who could also get hot at times. They just felt like a much more complete team last year. And this year there was a huge void. With all of that being said, next year's recruiting class for Tom Izzo was supposed to be very good. All of that, though, to caveat, it's a recruiting class. It's not a, transfer class. You're not bringing in guys like Michigan did that are ready to go right now and will immediately contribute to winning. There is a concern here that Tom Izzo is being too stubborn to actually change his ways and to actually make Michigan State a national championship contender. Now, if there was a time to go all in, so to speak, now in college sports, there's not really there's no cap, so it's not like you have to worry about that sort of thing. But, if there ever was a time to go all in, it would be next year. With that said, though, next year is not promised. So that is next year's problems. Now, once again, we'll see. By the time this clip goes up, the UCLA game will be over, and hopefully Michigan State will have, gotten themselves back on track with the win. Following that, on Sunday, they got Ohio State at home. That Ohio State is not good. That should be a win. I mean, Wisconsin isn't good either. And Minnesota isn't good either. But Michigan State, nevertheless, lost to them too. So you got to beat UCLA. You got to beat Ohio State. Unfortunately, after them, you've got what I like to call the hellish gauntlet from hell. I'm very clever with my names. You got at Purdue, who right now does not look very good against Michigan, and so maybe they're a little bit overrated. Then you got to go on the road to Indiana, who you beat earlier this year, but still, it's not an easy place to play. Then you get Rutgers at home, and you end the year with Michigan on the road, who look like a national championship contending team. Let's just say it like it is. That is not an easy stretch. 2 road games, no more back-to-back home games. This is going to be your last stretch of home games back-to-back. So you got to take advantage. You got to go out there and you got to get some wins. And you're going to have to steal a few. Like, if you can split the Michigan and Purdue set, I prefer to get the win against Michigan just to, split the season series. That would be nice, but even if you can get the win against Purdue and just lose against Michigan, fine. You take it, you live with it. Michigan's a far superior team this year. What are you going to do? So, yes, to circle this all, to wrap this all up in a glorious present. Yes, Tom Izzo deserves a good portion of the blame for Michigan State basketball's current state. I mean, the shooting has been a problem the last 2-3 years, and it really hasn't gotten better, despite the transfers, despite the recruits, despite the development. Guys like Cohen Carr and Jeremy Fears, who are some of your top scorers, have not developed a three-point shot. They just haven't. On the other hand, players got to be better. Looking at you, Carson Cooper. I'm even looking at Cohen Carr. Like, not enjoying all the foul trouble that he finds himself in all the time. And it doesn't help that once again he can't shoot. So not a good combination of things when you get yourself into foul trouble real early and you can't shoot. So is not good. It's not good overall. And I guess it goes to the standard that Michigan State basketball, in my mind, is put at, that a team that is the number 15 team ranked in the country with a 20-5 record and is fifth in the conference, that I am, basically like, I think they're like, I don't even care. Like, I'm just upset with them, and I they need to be better. Like, for most teams in the Big Ten, I guess they would probably take this. Like, if you were Northwestern and you were fifth in the Big Ten and 20-5, you'd be having the time of your life. But for me, I would like to see Michigan State win a national championship again. And I would like to see Tom Izzo win a national championship again. But if Tom Izzo doesn't want to, attack the obvious flaw in this team, which is the shooting, then I guess we're just going to ride him out, which is fine. I mean, you're going to have probably more success than most teams by just riding out Tom Izzo. But I would like to win a national championship, and especially if Michigan pulls it off this year, and they've gotten much closer to national championship games or national championship wins more recently than Michigan State. And if they could pull it off this year, which they very well could, that is going to be a massive indictment in Tom Izzo, that a guy in Dusty May in his first big-time job, right, his first major conference, major program coaching job in just 2 years gets a national championship, while Tom Izzo is entering year like 25 and has only gotten one. That would be a massive indictment. Now, granted, Tom won his early too, so we don't know how the rest of Dusty May's career is going to play out. But all of that is to say, just get the win against UCLA tonight. Just don't ruin my Tuesday night, okay? Okay. What am I looking? Oh, it's a cruise line. It's like, I just saw couples therapy and they were getting a massage, and no, it's a cruise thing. Interesting. Michigan State to me kind of feels like a Sweet 16 team. I'm like looking back at some of their. I mean, they beat Kentucky, they beat North Carolina. Those are both those wins alone are probably going to get you in. You'd have to come. I mean, they would literally have to like lose all their games, I think, to not get in. Like, they'd have to lose out, I think, maybe, to not get in. And even then, they'd probably still get in with like a 10 seed or something. They might get in a play-in. But I mean, outside of those games, like, they beat Iowa. That doesn't really get you anything. They beat Penn State barely. That was a stressful game. They beat Toledo. They beat Oakland. Well, that was also a closer game. Round of 32. I don't know. I'm not quite there yet, Josh. Although, I mean, I guess I could see it. Like, I mean, look, we're the product of our own current circumstances right now. Like, the way they're playing right now, yeah, they might not get out of the first weekend. So I guess I'm not going to argue with anybody who thinks they're a round of 32 team. I think it would be not out of the realm of possibility. But yeah, they just gotta. I mean, they're going to have their defense carry them, but right now their defense has just not been good. Speaking of, there's Tom Izzo getting interviewed. Well, we think our guys are good enough to play with anybody. We're gonna play tough defense. They're not gonna let all the current stuff bother us too much. I love that man. I want him on like color commentary after he retires. Like Peacock, NBC, or TNT, or CBS, any one of you. Call him up as soon as he retires. Put him with Bill Raftery. That's what I want. I want Bill Raftery, Jason Benetti, and Tom Izzo calling March Madness. I know Jason Benetti doesn't do March Madness because it's CBS and he does stuff with Fox. But still. Anyway. All right. So, like I said at the top of the show, there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about. There isn't really much news. I did want to briefly talk about some NFL offseason stuff because a couple of cuts were made by one team down south. The Miami Dolphins waive both Tyreek Hill and Nick Chubb. Wow. Bradley Chubb. I don't think they're related. They're probably not related. Anyhow. My question is just where both these guys end up. And for Hill, it would be really funny if the Chiefs just end up picking him up. Like, hey, our lack of offensive production has really finally caught up with us. So no hard feelings about the whole letting you walk thing. Maybe we can all be friends. Like, maybe. Yeah. So they are just clearing. I mean, the Dolphins. Yeah, as far as what the Dolphins are doing, like they're clearing cap space. I think they're set for a full-on rebuild. I think they're going to be tanking for whoever the best quarterback is coming out of this draft. Maybe it's Arch Manning time. Their Arch Manning is finally going to put it together, and they're going to tank for him. Who knows? But as far as Tyreek Hill goes, like I said, the Chiefs, it would kind of work. I mean, like outside of the Chiefs, though, I don't know that any team is even going to want Tyreek Hill. He's obviously past his prime. Let me pull up his numbers real quick. He's still a very good wide receiver, obviously, but I don't think anybody in their right mind is saying he's one of the top receivers in the league right now because he's just not. He's, I think he's past 30 at this point. Yeah, he's 31 years old. He's coming off of a major injury. He played just 4 games last year. He hadn't been an All-Pro since 2023, so that'll be 3 years ago, starting next season. Now, granted, it was one of the great all-time runs where he was just an All-Pro basically every year. But, receiver past 30, coming off of an injury where he played just 4 games last year. He hadn't had over 1,000 yards since 23. I don't know, guys. I would be weary if I were teams. Now, luckily, the Lions are well and good as far as receivers. So this is not a player that I think the Lions would ever have on their radar. But what team it would be kind of fun? What if the Raiders pick him up? The Raiders could use a receiver. That would be that would be the example of bad player in a bad place. Like, he might have worked somewhere else, but you put him in a bad place. The one place I think you don't want Tyreek, is Las Vegas. I'm not saying that he is, a serial, let's call it a sex haver. I'm not saying that about Tyreek Hill. I would never say that about Tyreek Hill. However, he has a particular vice that he struggles with in his day-to-day life. So Las Vegas might not be the environment culturally that you'd want Tyreek Hill in. Maybe put him in like a place with ugly women. I don't know. Like, problem is these are mostly major metropolitan cities, so you're gonna have some good-looking gals. Send them to the Jets. That's mean. That's me. I wouldn't do that to anybody. Tyreek Hill is not a great human being. He has failed as a man in many regards. I wouldn't send him to the Jets. I'd send him to prison before I'd send him to Jets. At least in prison, you aren't like constantly put in front of the media and have to pretend that everything's great. And you don't have to catch passes from Tyrod Taylor. Are the Jets worse than prison? Let me know. Yeah, I guess the Jets do need a receiver. It will end up being a team that's not that good. I think that ends up picking him up. I could see the Chiefs going out and signing him to maybe not a huge deal. It really depends on what he's asking for. If he wants, all pro money, he's not going to get it. He's going to have to settle. I mean, like, it would, where else he might fit? Like, hey, the Eagles might be looking to trade AJ Brown. Maybe they say, you know what, AJ, we don't want you. We want your replacement, Tyreek Hill. That would be another bad player for a bad situation. Like, Tyreek Hill and Nick Sirianni is like prime haterade. Like that would make me as a Lions fan just want to murder the Eagles even more. I like the Eagles. I don't love them, but I don't like. It would make them even more hateable. You know. Now the other one, which is far more interesting, I think, is Bradley Chubb. So let me just pull up Bradley Chubb's. Okay. What is going on? Why is it not letting me scroll up? Football Reference, please. Thank you. Bradley Chubb. He is a solid scheme fit of the Packers. I mean, I guess they could use like a real. If I were the Packers, I wouldn't be stoked about signing him. I wouldn't. Obviously, I have an inherent bias against him. Against any player going to the Packers, but I don't think that would work out well long term. They're already dealing with their latest big acquisition getting injured. Don't know if it'd be a good idea to bring in a guy who just played 4 games. That's just me. That's just me, though. That's just me. Anyhow, on to Bradley Chubb. So Bradley Chubb is a guy that has stayed in the league for a respectable amount of time. He's been in the league since 2018. He's a couple-time Pro Bowler with Denver. He briefly had that stint with Miami. Just a couple of seasons ago, he had 11 sacks. And just last year, he had 8.5 sacks. One problem, he's going to be age 30, and he didn't play his 2024 season because he tore his ACL. Here's what I'll say. Because this is a player that I could see potentially the Lions picking up as a big-time signing, okay? Would I like the signing? Overall, yes. Would I be a little weary? Absolutely. In a similar way that I would be weary if the Lions signed Trey Hendrickson. Why? I've gone through it before. I'm not going to go through it again. Players, particularly kind of edge guys on the defensive line, unless they are all-time greats, like Lawrence Taylor or Aaron Donald, or I'm going to wait to put Micah Parsons in that regard, but outside of those kinds of players, after their year 30, their stats go, oh my God, millions are dead. Millions. Hundreds. Dozens. The number keeps getting smaller. And look, 8.5 sacks is certainly respectable. He played all 17 games last year. He had a fumble recovery there as well. 23 total tackles for loss, 47 total tackles, 24 of them solo. He played well for a bad Miami team. Now, you put him in Detroit, you put him with, a Lee McNeil up the middle, you got Aiden Hutchinson on the opposite side. You probably think his stats are going to be a lot boosted than what he was dealing with in Miami. Sure, absolutely. I would welcome the signing. I would be like, okay, this is good. You're bolstering a weakness in this team, which is the defensive line. With that said, though, this is not some so easy slam dunk alley-oop. If you don't do this, you're an idiot kind of signing. We saw it with Trey Hendrickson. There's a reason that I don't think a lot of teams, decided to, go after him. And I think he is, not feeling great about it either. I mean, let me just pull up Trey Hendrickson's numbers last year. I know we're talking about Bradley Chubb, not talking about Trey Hendrickson. He was 30. He was 30 last year. He had the 17.5 sacks, led the league. He was all pro. It was amazing. Everybody said he's a home run swing. This year he played in 7 games, had 4 sacks. The drop off is steep. So look, maybe Bradley Chubb has got one more year in him. Maybe he's got that Trey Hendrickson age 30 year. Maybe he's got that Myles Garrett in him. Where Myles Garrett, he's just going to be good forever. I'm convinced. I think that guy was sculpted by like a Renaissance sculptor. Every time I see him, I'm just like amazed that he's an actual real life human being. Anyway, Bradley Chubb, yes, he would be a definitive upgrade for Detroit. With that said, once again, you're entering your age 30 season. You're playing on the defensive line. You're only 2 years removed from an ACL tear. And this is a team in Detroit that has already dealt with a number of injuries on their defense. The last thing I want to do if I'm Brad Holmes is continue to try to bring in guys who are injured onto my defense. Now, granted, outside of that torn ACL, he's largely played in most games. 2022, his last time as a Pro Bowler, he played in 16 total games, started in 15 of them. 21, he played in 7. 20, his only other Pro Bowl year, he played in 14 games, but that was a weird season, so deal with that as you will. Played in 4 games in 19, 16 games in 18. And in the playoffs, to that point, with Miami, he did have a fumble, or he did force a fumble, so with a sack. So he certainly can perform in playoff games. Granted, it's one game, so deal with that as you will. And he wasn't even starting in that game. Once again, I would like Bradley Chubb. But if you were asking me, okay, is he absolutely the guy that you go get to bolster your defensive line? Am I jumping up and down for him? No. I think bolstering your defensive line is going to be a lot harder, and it might have to do in large part with a lot of internal development, a lot of scheme development, and then obviously some player acquisitions. Anyway, I'm talking in circles. That's pretty much all I had. So, all right. Like I said, wasn't a big news week. Right now, I'm just watching as Purdue continues to just die. They're down 51-36 at home against Michigan. I'm watching Abraham Lincoln, a.k.a. Braden Smith, just try to put the team on his back. I will say, if Purdue does come back, that would be a dream come true. That would be wonderful. Who even are? Let me look up. I'm going to look up the NFL free agents by position. Okay. NFL 2026 free agents. Okay. Position. We're just going to scroll down. Okay, this is not helpful. Let me just filter. This is going to be way easier. Filter. Position. Let's just do edge defender. So this isn't going to include everybody, but it'll probably include most people. I mean, here's what you're dealing with. Okay. You got Trey Hendrickson. You got Bradley Chubb, who I already mentioned. You want a 35-year-old Khalil Mack? Maybe on a 1-year deal, I guess. You want a 32-year-old Hassan Reddick? Again, on a 1-year deal, perhaps. I don't even know who Malcolm Kuntz is. He's only 27. Apparently they were paying him $11 million. Can I see can I get his stats at least? No. Okay, this website does not give me the stats. Let's look him up. Malcolm Kuntz. He had 4.5 sacks last year. Okay. That tells me a lot. He was playing on the Raiders, so, there's that. Danico Autry, don't even know who that is. Leonard Floyd. Jeez. Maybe you do go out and get Bradley Chubb. Maybe that is the only way. None of these other names are really doing much for me. You want Kyle Van Noy at 35? You want to bring him back? Arden Key. I actually wouldn't mind Arden Key. He was okay with Tennessee. Can I pull him up? Pretty sure he had a couple of plays there. He had a couple of years there of some success. Obviously, last year wasn't great, but he had a couple of years of 6.5 sacks, 6 sacks. It's not amazing. I'm not saying he's, again, I'd rather Bradley Chubb, but just saying. They're both the same age. So, let's see. Who else do we have? Can I get by age? Let's see. Who's the youngest? Okay, well, some of these guys are not actually free agents, so get back to just edge, just edge. There we go. Okay. I don't even know some of these names. Most of these names. David Ojabo. Oh man. You know, he was a former Michigan Wolverine. You know, maybe it work. Maybe it could work. Josh Paschal, I mean, you're not bringing him back, right? Unless it's on a really short-term or cheap deal. I don't think you're not doing that. Al-Quadin Muhammad, you had him for real cheap. He's probably going to get a massive payday. If you're going to pay somebody, I'd probably not prefer to pay him that much. So, yeah, maybe it really is just Bradley Chubb and everybody else. Maybe. Anyway, that's all I got. Yeah, one the major news week, so didn't have much to talk about. So, with that being said, hopefully next week it's a little bit more news. You know, this is like the worst time of the year for sports because, well, basketball is going to be starting up again later this week. The NBA, that is. Hockey is not going to be starting up until the end of the month because the NHL hates its fans. And baseball is going to be entering spring training, which nobody cares about. And the draft is too far away to really even talk about that. And free agency doesn't start until the beginning of the month. The worst month. All right. With that being said, though, we will be back next Tuesday. So be sure to come around and we'll have a good time. We'll break down all the sporting news of the week that week. Hopefully Michigan State will be right back on track to where they need to be. If you did enjoy, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. And have a great rest of your night. See you later, everybody. Goodbye. See you. Goodbye.